welcome to How I Got Here, the inside stories of startups and innovation in travel and transportation, with your hosts, PhocusWire's Kevin May and Mozio's David Litwak. Hello and welcome to How I Got Here, Mozio and PhocusWire's podcast about innovators in travel and transportation. Today we're joined by Rolf Schromgens. Rolf is the co-founder and former CEO of Trivago, a German hotel meta-search company he founded with his three co-founders in 2005. Prior to joining Trivago, Mr. Schromgens was founder and VP at Ciao, a consumer review website from 1999 to 2001. Thank you for joining us, Rolf.
Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to be here with you.
So we like to start off every one of these the same way, as you know, to ask you how you got here.
Yeah, so I'm a business major. My parents run a restaurant. That was the only way to convince them to study. So I went for business administration. Got to know my co-founders of my first company. Started my first company in this first big technology, internet wave in the 1990s, 2000. Did it in the very classical way. We raised a lot of money very early. After like half a year, we raised 20 million euro or something like that. What happened was that after a very short time, I didn't own a lot of the company anymore. We were a large founding team and we diluted with every single investor. And more or less investors were running the company, not me anymore. So I left actually, more or less gave away my shares, didn't sell them. Then I thought, I'm such an amazing guy. I can do whatever I want and I will be successful. And I couldn't be more wrong. So I started my first venture, did not work out. So the next one, I started to my PhD thesis, which I never finished. At the end, I took over the restaurant of my dad. He threw me out. And basically in 2005, I was more or less broke. I didn't know what to do. And that was basically when I came up with the initial idea of Trivago, brought my friends from my adventures before on board, Peter and Stefan. We started. Stefan unfortunately left after 2 years to become a professor. Today he's a dean of, I think, the most famous business school in Germany. And instead of Stefan, Malte came on board. So it was Malte, Peter, and me. We had a tough time because instead of doing what we did with our first company, with Trivago, we did it completely bootstrapped. So we started to learn coding. So I'm not a programmer. I'm not a developer, but I learned coding. And together with Peter, we basically for the first years we coded Trivago completely ourselves. In between, we took up some money, but never a lot. So I think in total we used like 700,000 euros. So, and I think that has defined a lot of the character of Trivago, which was always extremely number-based. We never had money to waste. So we were always growing the company out of cash flow. So I think that basically grew our competency in performance marketing and brand marketing and so on, the way how we did it. And I think it's also one of the things that made us successful, that we were very much independent from capital. So we were basically able to grow the company without any external influences. We also didn't ask for it. We were not very focused on external PR. We didn't look a lot around us. We were basically growing the company from the inside out. And we're able to experiment a lot. I think that we had a quite unique culture, a kind unique way how we thought about leadership and how we thought about organizations. And I would say if you would ask me today, I think that was basically our biggest advantage. So we were never good in what we did, but we were always becoming better very quickly. That's how we grew the company from Germany into Spain, all across Europe, into the US. Yeah, we're bringing the company IPO in 2016. Medium success, I think, with the IPO. Then we had a very good first half year. and then the circumstances around us changed. I left the company in 2019. I think I prepared it for quite a while. We reduced the team members that were still founders over like a time frame of 5 years. So I brought new people on board and handed over in 2019 to my new CEO. Today I'm still in the board, but not operational anymore. And and today I'm still extremely interested in the topic of leadership in organizations, trying to currently build up a nonprofit organization which tries to promote a lot of the ideas that we were able to develop within Trivago over the last 10 years.
That was great. Thanks ever so much, Rolf. I'm interested. It was sounding very negative at the beginning there. You were talking about your first business, and you diluted so much to your investors. And by the time you came to launch Trivago, you said you almost broke and sounded quite downbeat, as I say. What would you say you learned the most from that first experience that you applied to how you founded Trivago?
So I think different kinds of experience. I think for my first venture from chow.com, I think the first thing I learned, I think it was not a great idea to found a technology company and have no idea about technology. So I think I think it's at least a good start if you know about tech when you start a tech company.
Yeah.
I was 23 years old, directly from university. I did some visual basic programming when I was I don't know 18 or so, but that's about it. Yeah. And of course what happens is that you lose control, especially about the tech side, pretty soon. So that's something I learned. I learned never let investors take control. Never let people take control of your company who are too far outside of your business. And that's what we did with Trivago for at least for a very long time. And I think then I think in between what I learned with the other ventures that did not go so well, or with my PhD or whatsoever, I think I was definitely overestimating myself. I was overestimating my own competency and my own ability to pull something off, and I think that was a reality check. I think that became important later on.
And how did you modify either that part of your personality and skill set for when you did found Trivago? Was it the types of co-founders that you had come along with you? I mean, Malte and the others, I know some had been with you before, but how did you rectify your own failings, for want of a better word?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it. So first of all, I think when we started Trivago, it was really more about how we want to do it. So how we want to run the company. It was really not so much about what we're doing. Yeah. So I mean, it's not that this whole industry is not close to me. So my dad was basically for a very long time, he was part of this hospitality, how do you say, organization, like the local hospitality organization, right? So
Sure.
so it's not that this was super far away from me, but I mean, to be frank, it's not that I had an enormous passion for the industry, you know. It's that's not true. That would just not be true. But what we had an enormous passion of how we want to run this company, and we wanted to keep control about how we run this company for a very long time. So and if you decide that, you cannot go into the first financing round and basically say, okay, we built a model which is built up on financing, and after a while we basically a short while we lose control of the company. You cannot build a company like that. So that comes with a lot of conditions on how on what you do, how you do financing. Like you have to learn coding, You have to code yourself because you don't want to start with your first financing round and already lose 20% of the company. We did not have any money, right? I mean,
Right.
I was really, as I said, I was broke to start Trivago for the first, I think, 1.5 years or so. We didn't pay us anything. So I really was going to everybody around me. I was asking my parents for money. I was asking my girlfriend for money and their parents. So I think that was the way of how we started it, and it was really, really painful. But we did not want to raise money so early in the process to lose control.
Yeah.
And we also took the decision, and we couple of times took the decision to say no. We rather keep this a small business than losing control. I remember that we were struggling already for 2 or 3 years, and it was not really taking off. I mean, even 2018, you would rarely heard something about us, right? Internationally, definitely not even in Germany. And I talked to, and I think we paid ourselves 2,000 euro, 2,000 euro, yeah, 2,000 euro a month. And I was talking to my best friend, and he asked me, "Is this really something that you want to keep on doing? What happens if you pay yourself these 2,000 euro for the rest of your life, right? And that's it." And I said, that's fine. I do what I want to do. I can run the company in a way that I really want to run it, and it's fine. And I really meant it.
Yeah.
And I really meant it. And I think that was always the philosophy that we had. And at the end, we still grew massively, but it was still driven out of this core belief. So like even in 2018, 19, 20, like with every single sorry, not 18, 8, 9, 10, sorry. Every single person that I hired, I was thinking, so if everything goes wrong, can I still afford this person? Can I still really like pay this person's salary? And that might sound weird, but it's really true.
Tell me, changing subject a little bit. I remember meeting Malte at ITB Berlin. I think it was probably 2006, 2007. It was really early on, and there was Malte, and there was someone from the PR side, and I went into that meeting initially thinking it was a review website, like a hotel review TripAdvisor type thing. And then, it later emerged that actually, no, it's just pure meta search. And I wondered if there was perhaps not an issue, but whether the positioning of what Trivago was in those really, really early days was perhaps confusing to consumers or even to the industry.
Yeah.
Would that be fair?
Yes, totally fair. Of course, totally, totally fair. So it was completely confusing even to us. Yeah. I think though it was even later. I think it was rather 2008 or so. But because we definitely didn't have PR people. I think Malte was not there. ITB 2006 and 2007 we definitely didn't have a PR person.
Right.
So it might be 2018, 88. Sorry. But no, it's totally fair to say that actually. So we started, Trivago with a very different idea. So our initial idea was rather a kind of commercialized Wikipedia for travel. So we had this idea that you would basically build up content through a community, and then we always thought, okay, yeah, something like Wikipedia for travel, that would make sense, but why could you not commercialize it and then basically let the community participate in whatever money you would make? So that was the first initial idea. And yeah, and that really did not take off so well. And on the so I think it's a really weird story actually. So we were building up this community, and we were building up all this content about places and spots to go, like in Paris and so on, and then I remember that we had a lot of display advertising. So it must have been 2006, 2007 still. So because nobody really was interested in performance, right? So you were having this display advertising on your website, and you could take like CPMs of 20 euro, 40 euro, 60 euro, depending on what kind of format it was. So it's completely insane because nobody was looking at performance. And then people came to us and said, guys, we checked now for the first time, and basically, I don't know, we gave you 2,000 euro last month, and we got one booking from you. That doesn't work for us, and that was really like, okay, we from one moment to another, we kind of lost a lot of our business basically there, and we went back to people and said, hey guys, this doesn't make any sense because basically, we have here an article about Paris, I don't know, the Louvre or whatsoever, and then you basically you show your display advertising, and you I don't know, you promote a trip to the Caribbean, and then I go to your homepage, and the only thing that I see is a short trip to London. So how should ever somebody convert from the Louvre, to a hotel close to the Louvre? Can you not just put basically all these, next to the Louvre? Could you not put ads basically for hotels close to the Louvre, right? That must be easy, right? So we went to Booking and Expedia and so on. So we went to these companies, and what you have to, and that was 2006. So this was quite early for them. And Expedia didn't even have control about their technology, right? So they basically were getting the inventory from a different source, and Booking.com very similar. So we asked them to do that, and they said, no, we cannot do that. That's insane. That's completely insane. How should that work? And so what we did in that moment was that we said, okay, if you cannot make it work, we can. So we basically created bots which were kind of emulating user behavior. I still know how they work because I programmed them myself. I developed them myself, and they had to jump through all these loops basically to make Expedia think that this is a human user, right now going to the website, and we got basically their results, and this gave us a chance to place ads, next to the article about the Louvre with hotels close to the Louvre. And we did that, with 1 and 2 and 3 advertisers. And at the end, basically, we came up with the same hotels all over again, slightly different names, but even worse, with totally different prices. And that's what's really happening, right? So we were putting these ads there, and they were having different prices, and we said, okay, this looks like crap, because it's basically like the same hotel name all over the place with different prices. What should people think? And then basically that was the moment when we said, okay, let's put all these hotels in one database so that we just show the hotel name once and all the prices underneath, right? And that was the birth of the hotel search. There was never the idea to create a hotel search. That was it was just an evolution. It was a mistake, and for 2 more years or so, we still thought that people are using us because of the nice articles about the Louvre, which at the end we found out they didn't. They just use us as a meta search, right? So for all these 2 years, and this is probably the time when you said, okay, this was completely for people confusing. For all these years, you basically we're all over the place. So because our original community didn't really work out, right?
Yeah.
So we went into we came up with this idea of this hotel ads, right? We came up with we started to to do flight search. We started to sell our software to travel agencies, like local travel agencies that would use the software. We did white labels and so on and so on. So we went all over the place just to get revenue from somewhere, because we're so desperate to get our revenue back, right? And and I think that was really, and I think that was 2018, I think, or so, when we really first time really defined for us our mission statement, and we really said, okay, either we focus now, right, and we find something that we can really scale, or we will be dead, right? And I think that was a very important point in the history of Trivago, when we really focused and said, okay, and we're honest to ourselves that basically the technology part, the part of, okay, we write those bots, we aggregate these prices and so on, that this is our business way more than the community.
I'm glad I remembered that correctly now. So great, David.
It's a fascinating story, and yet another example of the travel inspiration startup that didn't work and ended up doing something much more concrete, actually. So it tends to be a pattern we recognize a lot. It's funny, at the beginning, rewinding a little bit, when you mentioned about how you guys were really dedicated to not giving up control to investors. A saying that people, I think, throw around a lot around, like, work to live, not live to work, almost, kind of, right? And it felt like you were constructing Trivago almost like and forgive me for saying this, a lifestyle business almost to start. Would it be a correct assumption, a correct characterization to say you guys built it so it could be a lifestyle business, and it happened to be a $1 billion business? Would you think that's correct?
No. I don't think that would characterize it. I think we always. So I'm really driven by productivity, and I hate if something is not productive. And I felt that the kind of like impact that I felt from investors was not productive at all, because it was basically it was so I believe in long-term value generation, and I believe into the creation of systems. So I really think that to create long-term value, it's not so much about a single idea. It's not so about the strategy. It's not so much about, do you go first in this country or that country or so. I don't think that this is really at the end creating the value. So what I think is creating the value is the overall system. It's a way of how people work together and how they take decisions. But not the seemingly important decision of strategy, but like, how do they take decisions on an everyday level? So how does somebody who's taking care of the SEM account for Hungary, so how does he take or she take decisions, right? So that's important, way more than the decisions that I take as a CEO. And I think that was a strong belief, and that's something I wanted to secure. I wanted to secure that we can be productive with what we do. So it was not so much like, okay, we just do this business at the side or so. No, I mean, we were really, I was broke. I didn't have any financial freedom at all. Of course, we wanted this business to be very successful, but just we did not want to compromise on the idea of creating the best operating system for it.
I see. And it seems like that's a passion that drives you outside. So I feel like I should have phrased that differently. I get what you're saying now. It sounds like you have a passion other than, you said yourself, you weren't like super passionate about the industry itself. It seems like your passion as a person is this engine. Like, how do you refine the engine that a company is? And it could have been building, widgets or websites. What was more interesting to you, if am I saying this correctly, was how to optimize this engine. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much correct. And I think it's also something that we had in common with other very successful, even way more successful tech companies, travel tech companies than us, right? I mean, when I look, for example, at Booking.com or so, I think it's about their operating system a lot, I would say. Less about the strategy, less about a unique product or whatsoever. It's a lot about their operating system. And I'm really a big fan of what they did. I think it's amazing, especially the early founders. I think they created an amazing culture in this company, that made them so successful, and it was a lot about the operating system, I think.
Yeah. No, I think that's very true. I mean, I think there's tons of books about like Google and 20% time and all these different hacks that people, at various iconic companies have used over the years. And sometimes they get, sometimes they are just hacks, and the things that get the press are the things that don't deserve it. But I think that it's a good point for our listeners to kind of focus on, is I think very often we do get a little bit more interested on this podcast with the kind of the stories of how the founders met and maybe the strategy for how the company was built, without thinking about the strategy for how to build the company itself, like the people in the company. So, before I move on to another question, actually, you touched on the fact that you're kind of thinking of a nonprofit right now, or how to standardize some of this stuff. Was there a big overarching learning or that you got from Trivago about how to create the company engine that you were trying to now put out into the world through this kind of nonprofit?
So the way of how I look at a company is basically, how do you create the perfect information processing machine? So I think the success of a company is majorly driven by that. So how do you create a perfect information processing machine? Because I think that we live in a world where really of constantly speeding up exponential change, more or less. And I think in a world that is constantly accelerating, I think the most important thing for an organization is how fast can it learn. Yeah. And basically, I think when you want to create a successful organization, I think everything else is second. So the most important thing is just the speed of learning. So how can you learn faster than others? And I think that is something that I really try to do, or we really try to do at Trivago, to create a company which is just faster in learning than others. And we have not been 100% succeeding with that, but I think it was definitely something that I took away, that this is the most important thing. And this comes with a lot of implications, in my opinion. Comes a lot of implications in how you shape culture, that you rather should focus on values and on rules, for example, because rules are way too slow to solve a problem. That it's rather about creating faster learning loops than creating success. I think that's super important. And when you're looking at now, I don't know, I'm very fascinated by what Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX, for example, right now, and with the new Starship and so on production, and how fast he's able basically to put out one Starship after the other. Basically what he did already with the Falcons before. And they come back, they explode, and the next Starship gets out, it comes back and explodes. And see, and there's still people laughing, and I think it's so fun. That's so funny, I cannot understand why people cannot understand what's happening there, for me. Because this is learning loops, this is gathering information, this is building a lot of headroom between you and everybody else who could compete with you. Every time this rocket explodes, and I think that is something that I really learned a lot from Trivago.
What's interesting, there's an American general named General Stanley McChrystal, who now is a consulting group called the McChrystal Group, and I was at a kind of little sit down with him at one point 4 or 5 years ago, and he was talking about the time when the Iraq War turned around. Was they used to do raids on some terrorist cell, and they do a raid at 9 p.m. and they would take 24 hours to process the information, and then when they figured out who the conspirators were with the person whose house they just raided, they would go do another raid the next day. But by the next day at 9 p.m. those terrorists had already gotten the word that their buddy had been raided, and they were long gone. And he told me that when the tide of the war turned was when they did a raid at 9, processed the information, did another raid at 12, processed information again, and did another raid at 2 or 3 in the morning. And they increased the cadence of learning, as kind of deep phrase it in a very similar way to you. They increased the cadence of learning to the extent where like the competitors just couldn't, in this case, literally terrorists, couldn't, keep up. So I love that way of thinking about things. And it's also something I've mentioned to startup founders, where often they'll go and they'll say, well, we're stealth, we can't tell anyone what we're doing. And I roll my eyes at that, because I'm like, you don't understand that, like, when I'm starting a new company, I want as much information as possible so I can move faster. And in fact, if telling you what I'm doing gets me more information and I can move faster, I will win. Like, if me not telling you what I'm doing means I'm operating with a quarter of a fraction of the information that I need, all of a sudden, like, I'm at a severe disadvantage. So I've always been extremely public about the things I'm working on, and like under the assumption of exactly what you said, I'm just going to learn faster than the other guy.
I couldn't agree more. I think the people who still believe in stealth mode, I think they're still stuck to kind of the old world, like where it was about competitive advantages and where you could secure them, and where it was like, I would say, the resource view of this world, right? So where basically you had these specific resources and you had to own them, so that somebody else would not own them. So and I think that's the idea of those people. And I think today it's not possible anyway. So today, it's not about the resource. It's even not about the information or the network or the knowledge you create on top. Today, I think the competitive advantage is how fast are you able to change it and how fast are you able to learn, right? And somebody else who's not stealth about what they do, they are just way faster to learn about their stuff, right? And the same is true. I mean, I see today. I lately heard from a project where they, for 4 or 5 years, they were developing a product without any user interaction, like putting millions and millions into it, because they were afraid that somebody else could take this idea, and I think that's insane. It's just insane.
I always say they watch The Social Network one too many times and think everyone is out to steal your idea. And I was just like, dude.
Yeah, it's really crazy, because it's not the ideas anymore. And I think that's also that people overestimate the idea. So I think that, I mean, even like The Social Network, I mean, the initial idea about Facebook, I think was there was a website in Germany in that time. It was called Hot or Not. I'm not sure if that was an international one or so, but
it was actually done by a Berkeley grad, and I went to Berkeley, so he's like 10 years older than me. But yeah, it's popular.
Okay, but it was around way before Facebook, right? And basically, the initial Facebook was basically a Hot or Not, just with real names, probably. Yeah. So the initial idea of Facebook was not amazing. It was the execution. It was like how fast they learned, how fast they added new things. Twitter had the timeline way before Facebook had it, right? Snap had the stories way before Insta had it, right? So I think it's a question, like, do you build a culture that's just super quick and adapting and understanding, what works, what doesn't work, how can you evolve? And not so much, it's about the culture of Facebook way more than it's about the idea.
I think it's also a culture of humility too, because I think something I've recognized, like, I'm very proud of some of the things I've done, but I looked back at some of my more, quote unquote brilliant ideas, and I think they're all derivative. They're derivative from someone else's feedback at some point. And I think if you recognize that you're not as brilliant as you think you are, you recognize that most of your good ideas have actually originated in someone else's offhand comment that they made, or feedback on your pitch deck or something like that. I think you realize that, like, none of us are that brilliant. You kind of need, that external feedback. It's a very humbling experience to kind of come to that conclusion.
Yeah, and I think we need those leaders. I think we need the humble leaders. I think that's also one of my major conclusions. We need leaders who are able to take themselves back, not overestimate their own impact, basically, like overestimate their own decision power and what they do, but really realize that they're all part of a bigger system, and that's way more complex than they think. I think we have a tendency to oversimplify in strategy. We boil things down to something meaningless at the end. And I think that's important. And the moment where leaders understand that they are way less important than they are, I think they are important as a system creator, but often they derive their importance from the decision and not from the system they create, and I think that's a mistake.
It's an interesting, yeah, that's interesting, because some might argue that startup culture often creates CEOs and leaders that have enormous egos and don't understand how to be humble. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think it's a stage question for me. So I think that in an early stage of a company, I think the company is growing through and getting through this initial hurdles through the confidence of its founders or through the naivety of their founders. So I think definitely that's true. So through the initial hurdles, it's definitely good to have some of that, to be extremely driven, to either be egocentric or be naive, but one of this is probably good to have. But the problem is, and that still works, I think, for a while. I think when you have 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, that still works. But I think you see also a lot of these leaders struggling in the moment where the organization gets more complex. And then you have extremely intelligent leaders who then make it to the next level, and they are great leaders for a company of 300 or whatsoever. But there's one point when the complexity gets so massive, and then basically the focus on the ego that fires back. And I think that's also what we see. And I think then it's about understanding that you're not the greatest person, right? Then it's about hiring people that can deal, or evolving people that can deal with the complexity, or rather empowering people underneath you. I think that's probably the best methodology, right? But I think for me, it's a question of in which stage you are and how complex is the business right now.
You mentioned, Rolf, 5 minutes or so ago, about creating a culture of speed so that you can do things quickly, whether it's products, etc., etc. I wonder how you develop, or that culture is maintained, when after, I think, was it 10 years of the business, you then get an enormous investment and Expedia takes a majority stake in Trivago. How do you manage the culture of the company at that point? Because, arguably Expedia may have had a very different culture to Trivago.
I think that was very interesting because at that point, nothing changed really. Mm-hmm. And I think it's maybe the way of how the deal came together, and how we positioned ourselves, and how we made expectations clear, and how we also found a structure that would allow us to be independent. But it's really, it's not something that I told investors with the IPO. It's really true. So there is not a single decision that I did while Expedia was an investor into Trivago that I would have done differently, that we as a team would have done differently, or anybody in the company would have done differently. It's really true. So they were taking really a step back, and we were also making clear that we don't want to have any interference. So I think for the first 3 years, I said, I told everybody in the company, you are not allowed, whatever happens, you're not allowed to get in contact with anybody from Expedia. And the moment somebody gets in contact from Expedia, with you in contact with Expedia, you have to forward it to me personally. So so I think for me that was very important. It was very important to keep the identity of Trivago as pure as possible in that moment, and not be slowed down by another larger company. And I think that was also very successful for a long time.
May I just interrupt a moment, please, Rolf? I have to ask, how many emails did you get forwarded to you?
I think in the beginning it were quite some.
Okay.
Then it became less and less. And I think then at the end, the interference became stronger again.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was also a reason. I mean, we had the idea that through the IPO, we would be closer to our identity. So I really believe that the identity of a company is super, super important, and to know what you can do, what you can't do, to know yourself, I think it's very important. And that was really also the idea with the IPO. Yeah. I think what we really underestimated is how the focus of or putting so much focus then on the external capital markets and so on, how that would change the company. So I think that was rather having a bigger impact, I think, than all of what Expedia did. So they were very hands off, and they were also knowing that I think what they I think they tried somehow to copy the booking story, so Priceline Booking Corporation, and that was also completely hands off, right? So for a very long time. So really Priceline was successful with booking because they took a step back and they were not interfering at all. And I think that Expedia kind of thought, okay, that's probably the way to deal with these European companies here. So no, they were very, very, they were taking themselves back a lot. Yeah.
So 2 very quick questions as we come to the end of our time here, Rolf. Again, about culture. I don't think any interview with anyone from Trivago really cannot mention the Trivago man and that incredible ad campaign from a few years ago. And I wonder if there is anything from the culture of Trivago within the cheekiness of that campaign, or whether that was just a very smart ad agency.
No, the thing is, we never had ad agencies. We did everything ourselves all the time.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
And I mean, the story behind that is that Tim, that's a guy who plays the Trivago guy. He was an actor here in Berlin, so an American actor who was playing a role in a small soap opera here in Germany. And a friend of mine who's also the director of our commercials, and he's actually one of my best friends. He found him in this bar and asked him, hey, do you want to basically do the voiceover for one of our spots? So he did the voiceover of the spots. And then I approached Frank and I said, Frank, all of these beautiful commercials that we do in Europe, we tested them all. None of them works in the US. Yeah, so we don't get it. Why does none of these commercials that really are successful in Europe, why does none of them work in the US? Let's do something super easy. And basically, I told Frank, let's do following. The way of how I approach people on the trade fair is, when the way of like you develop a strategy when you talk to people at a trade fair. Yeah, so people pass by, and the way of how you do it is basically you ask them a question and say, have you ever booked a hotel online? So you ask them a question where they usually say yes, right? So you have to always get yeses from them, right? So I was always asking them, have you ever booked a hotel online? Yes. Okay. Have you ever realized that there's so many prices for the exactly same room? And so basically I told Frank, can we please just do this? Please just do this. Just let a person explain it straight to the people what we do, because nobody seems to get it. Let them just explain it like this. And he said, Rolf, this is the most stupid idea I've ever heard. I will not invest time into this. But okay, you told me to do so I'll take this guy from the bar, that did the voiceover for our previous spot, and I will just let him do it, right? But this will never work. So he put this guy he met in this bar. He put him in front of the green screen, and let him do his show. And we did some animation after that, and then we aired the spot, and this was so tremendously more successful than any other spot that we did before. And not only that this thing was successful, but also it was an amazing platform basically for us, because the thing is that because it was so easy, we could easily adapt it. So I'm not sure if you were aware, but we did thousands of different variations of this.
Correct,
So basically we use this platform to create kind of a A/B testing for commercials, right, in the US. And so we improved our commercials step by step by step by step. And at the end we stuck to that platform. And I think at the end we even skipped Tim, and we had another actor doing it, but that was not important anymore. So we established the platform basically. Yeah, but that's the reason. So so if there's something about Trivago in it, it's then basically our MVP idea of like just doing something super fast and just putting it out there, and then we see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful example of advertising that money can't buy. I mean, yes, it was an advertising campaign, but when you get mainstream media talking about the star of an ad campaign, it just amplifies what you've already produced. I mean, it was a terrific campaign.
Yeah, I mean, somehow it works. I mean, but at the end, it was really interesting that we really found out it was not so much really about Tim at the end. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it helped, of course. I mean, getting that kind of talk about Tim, I think that definitely helped. Yeah.
That's it, I'm afraid, Rolf. There's probably about a dozen or other things that David and I could have asked you about the minutiae of pay-per-click advertising and things like that. But I actually think on reflection, we've got a much better interview, just kind of hearing the way you think and talk about culture and all those kind of things. So that was really great. So Rolf from Trivago, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. It was great talking to you.
Okay. You've been listening to another episode of How I Got Here. That's Mozio and PhocusWire's weekly podcast where we talk to the founders and innovators and entrepreneurs in travel, tourism and hospitality. If this is your first time to the show, you can subscribe in all the usual places. That's Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Alexa. Subscribe there, give us a review, give us a rating. We always like to hear what people have got to say. But that's it from us. Thanks again to Rolf. On behalf of David and I, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the How I Got Here podcast. We'll be back next week with more insight stories behind startups and innovation in travel and transportation. Check mozio.com/move for a complete write-up of the highlights of every podcast with translations into 5 languages, and get your daily dose of news on the digital travel economy by subscribing to the newsletter at PhocusWire.com. See you next week.